Okay, I'm just gonna make it very clear right now. I do not hate James Gunn. You know, when I heard that he was gonna be in charge of the DCEU, or now the DCU, I wasn't really mad as the majority of people. But what I hoped for and what he said, like it's gonna be a reboot, I was like, okay, I'm fine with it. I really loved the DCU, but it was a completely messed up. The Justice League movie, it was a mess. So I was like, I'm ready for a reboot. But then when he said a soft reboot, I started having issues with this guy because from there onwards, I started having doubts. Like seriously, majority of the people he kept was people from his movies, his project, like this making Suicide Squad or the Suicide Squad, and I just started having issues with that. Like I really, what I wanted from James Gunn was a full clean reboot. Everyone from the old DCEU gone and start with the new characters. If you, I didn't care who else came in. I really loved the Incredible Superman, but if they're gonna do a reboot, just a full reboot is all what we needed. But now I see another video that says James Gunn has made a huge mistake. Now I'm interested in seeing what huge mistake he has done. So let's see the video.
Welcome back to our movie news. James Gunn had taken a break from answering fans' questions on social media whilst the strikes were going on, but as the strikes are ending, he has returned to Instagram threads to talk to fans. But once again, I don't really think he has helped himself, and today we will find out why. So the first confirmation Gunn had for us was that Zolo will continue playing Blue Beetle, and the same goes for Viola Davis as Waller and John Cena as Peacemaker. I don't agree with that decision, but let's continue. And then he responded to a fan saying, "You said DC Studios movies and canon starts with Superman Legacy. I and many others are still confused."
Yeah,
Stating nothing is canon until Creature Commandos next year, a sort of aperitif to the DCU, and then a deeper dive into the universe with Superman Legacy after that. It's a very human drive to want to understand everything all the time, but I think it's okay to be confused on what's happening in the DCU since no one has seen anything from the
okay. So you see, this is the problem right here. Like, it's like what you said. It's understandable that humans will want to understand everything. No, 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 no. We don't. It's what you want to understand is that just make a simple decision, a full reboot. That's what we all needed. This thing about Blue Beetle is the first character in DCU, but his story does not matter. We're gonna leave his story, but the first thing is gonna be Superman Legacy. That's when things are gonna be taken seriously. But then again, this today is like based on this tweet, it's like Creature Command is when the DCU starts. It's like everything is saying it's contradicting itself, and it's confusing. It's very confusing. I know, maybe you are a big James Gunn fan. Please don't just understand where other people are coming from. It's very confusing. What we all wanted was just a simple reboot. Yeah, let's continue.
saying, and yes, some actors will be playing characters they've played in other stories, and some plot points might be consistent with plot points from the dozens of films, shows, and animated projects that have come from DC in the past. But nothing is canon until Creature Commandos and Legacy. Right, so let's break this down a bit to try and make sense of it all. So firstly, in his first paragraph, he confirms that the DCEU isn't canon to the DCU. None of those movies or shows connect to the story of the DCU. The first story told in the DCU is Creature Commandos, which will give us a light introduction into this new DC universe, and then we will get a deeper dive with Superman Legacy. So he didn't say this before the last 3 DCEU movies were released because he wanted to try and get fans to go see them. I guess he thought if he had confirmed that before the 3 films were released, fans wouldn't go see them. But we already knew that a reboot of sorts was happening, and people didn't go bother watching them anyway. I think he's realised that most people know that now, and the studio may have lost hope that Aquaman 2 would do well at the box office, so he's okay with releasing that news now. Now the second paragraph is where it gets a little bit more confusing. So there will be some actors from the DCEU playing the same characters in the DCU, and he's confirmed some of those actors in the first reply, stating Peacemaker, Waller and Blue Beetle will be played by the same actors. He's also confirmed that some plot points may be consistent with other plot points in dozens of films, shows and animated projects from DC in the past. Now, I think he is trying to make a point here without openly showing his frustration. I think he means past DCEU stories, but doesn't want to say that as that will anger fans more. I think he's trying to make the point that stories told outside of the DCEU have similar plot points as DCEU stories, as they are all from the same source material.
Yeah, it's
So
understandable.
fans shouldn't see actors playing the same characters and having similar or the same past as their DCEU versions and be confused or annoyed at it, as that is just due to that story being the story of those characters in the comics. So the characters whose pasts are similar to their DCEU versions is just because they are from the same piece of source material, and they are just played by the same actors because Gunn likes them. It doesn't
Yep.
mean the DCEU is canon to the DCU. And I get what he means, but I still think it's a bad idea. It's just adding unnecessary confusion, and I've looked all over social media to see fans' reactions, and a lot of fans have been saying the same thing. This is confusing. And if us fans are finding it confusing, imagine what general audiences will feel like when they see one character virtually the same from the DCEU with a brand new rebooted character from the DCU. They're gonna feel like it's just the same mess that has happened since 2019. They won't know the ins and outs of the DCU. They will just see a half-attempted reboot of what's been happening for the past 5 or 6 years, which is why they were turned off from the DCEU in the first place. They may not give the DCU time to grow if it just looks like random projects being greenlit, with some actors staying the same and some being changed. Now sure, Gunn may plan out an incredible DC universe with a long-term plan in place, but audiences may not bother if all they see are a bunch of confusing decisions in the first couple of projects. I've seen some comic book fans saying that what Gunn is doing is fine because they do it in the comics all the time, where they reboot some characters and keep others the same. But you're seeing that from a comic book fan's perspective. I don't read comics, I never have, and that is what the general audiences like too. The only difference is that I've been following along with all the decision making. If general audiences see some actors playing the same characters they've played in the DCEU, but then see them with rebooted and recasted versions of those characters who have interacted with those DCEU characters, the general audience will see that and just either be confused or uninterested, because it feels like the same mess that has been happening for the past 5 years. A lot of the general audience
Damn,
won't
I
even
miss
know
Aaron
what the
Crowell.
DCEU or DCU is. They just see films connected to one another and follow along with it, just like normal sequels to films they like. If they've been watching the DCEU without knowing what the universe is called, then they're going to be confused when they see Wonder Woman being the same actress, but an entirely new Superman alongside.
Yeah, I don't think that he's thinking about that. He's thinking more of just being more fans just watching this, but it's more about the general audience about watching this and getting confused.
And if they have been turned off from the DCEU but see actors playing the same characters in these
Yep.
DCU trailers, then they're just gonna think it's still the DCEU
I mean,
and won't bother watching.
but the same thing happened with the Flash. They bring back, Michael Keaton's Batman, and they were expecting the people who watch the Michael Keaton's Batman movies to come and bring in big revenue to the Flash, but that did not happen because there are just not too many of those people. The people who usually watch these movies are just the general audience that just come want to watch, but they did not like what they see, so they didn't like it. And majority of people say the Flash is good. But the people who usually maybe grow up with Michael Keaton's Batman, and they are just overall just in general big fan of the Flash, but yeah, they're just not too many for them to bring in enough money. So a good movie is needed. Me personally, I did not like the Flash, but yeah, this is just what I thought.
Like I said, Gunn's plan could be incredible, but this cherry picking he is doing is just going to be so confusing to so many, and I think he's going to be the one who gets punished by it. What he has said in those paragraphs is pretty much this: So the DCU is a full reboot from the DCEU, but some actors from the DCEU will stay the same and some will go, and some events from the DCEU will be a part of the DCU, but the DCEU isn't canon to the DCU at all, as other parts will be different. That is so confusing. There
True.
are DC fans who have been invested in DC stories for over 40 years and are getting confused by this.
Yep.
Imagine what the average moviegoer is going to be like. Sure, you could play devil's advocate and say that, well, they just probably wouldn't care or notice, they just want good films. Then what happened to the past 4 years of DCEU movies that fans say are good films? Audiences haven't turned up for any of them. Not
You
even
see?
The Flash, who had a film filled with DC favourites. At this point, it doesn't matter if the films are good or not. Audiences are just not turning up to DC Cinematic Universe films, and if Gunn thinks a half-attempted reboot is going to solve
No, it's not. It's not gonna work.
grossing DCEU film since 2018 was Black Adam, a third-tier character that no general audiences would have been aware of until The Rock played.
Yeah, and people still say it's a flop, but still, think about it. You see, C-type character making that kind of money.
DC heroes of all time,
Bigger than The Flash.
Michael Keaton's Batman, who was heavily promoted. Audiences simply don't care about the DCEU, and if Gunn is keeping actors and characters from the DCEU in the DCU, but making them look slightly different, or having a slightly different story than in the DCEU, then audiences will see that and think this is the same mess as before. They won't give him the time to prove this is completely different or so much better. A complete clean slate is what is needed. Reboot every single thing this universe had. However, keeping Blue Beetle makes sense. His film has just come out and doesn't connect to anything from the DCEU. He can perfectly slot in without anyone questioning it. For characters like Waller and Peacemaker, they have both interacted with DCEU characters. And
Yeah,
Waller
that
has
is the
for a long,
problem with
long
those
time.
characters.
She interacted with the original Suicide Squad, with Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne. She sent the Justice League to help out Peacemaker. She even worked with the JSA and threatened Black Adam with Henry Cavill's Superman. She has been everywhere in the DCEU. And yes, Viola Davis was great as Waller, but that doesn't get in the way of storytelling and consistency. It's the same if they bring back Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I think she was amazing as Wonder Woman, and from a fan's perspective, I think it would be cool to see her continue. But from a business perspective and a marketing perspective, it would be incredibly stupid. Seeing her with a new Superman and Batman just wouldn't make sense and would just remind everyone of the other DC movies she's been in. We will remember her fighting alongside Batman and Superman in Batman v Superman and fighting with the Justice League, which will mean the DCU is directly connected to the DCEU, and the reputation of the DCEU will follow the DCU forever. I see that some fans are trying
Damn,
to
he is
compare
so
this all to
spot on.
J.K. Simmons returning to the MCU as J. Jonah Jameson, but that is completely different. That is a very small character that returns 12 years later in a packed and very successful Marvel universe as a bit of fan service, not multiple actors being kept on in a rebranded DC universe a couple of years after we last saw them. It is completely different. They just need to wipe the slate clean, start over entirely, a fully committed reboot where everyone is gone. This will be the DCU's biggest weakness, and I think will have major impact on the DCU's success. The general audiences who didn't like the DCEU, who see actors playing the same characters, won't go to watch those movies. And the general audiences who liked the DCEU and see the actors playing the same characters will be confused when they see
They'll probably will not even go because they already don't like what is happening with the DCU.
mess made because Gunn doesn't want to commit to a full reboot, because he either doesn't want to reboot his favorite actors from the DCEU,
Yeah, he doesn't want
wanted
that.
to get rid of those actors he didn't like, or doesn't want to bother retelling stories for some of these characters. I want the DCU. Wow, I've said DCU and DCEU a lot in this video. Anyway, I want the DCU to be great. I want it to be so much better than the DCEU, because who wouldn't want to see the best DC can be? So I really care about the decisions DC Studios makes, and I think this is one of the biggest mistakes they could have made. I am really worried about the repercussions this decision will have on the DC universe. I just don't see how audiences will turn up to DCU projects if they still see it as the DCEU with a couple of recasts. I am really hopeful for this DC universe.
I am not hopeful. My hope is way down. Like, yeah, very down.
Worry. DCEU movies have been flopping like crazy, and if audiences still feel a connection to the DCEU in these DCU movies, then I think they just won't turn up. Which is why I think there is actually a lot of pressure on Superman Legacy. I know some argue that it doesn't need to be a big success as it's just at the beginning of a cinematic universe, but this is Superman, the biggest superhero of all time. It needs to break even at least. It needs the audience to be there, because if audiences can get on board with that rebooted Superman story, then they will be far easier to get on board with the rest of the DCU. Anyway, I've had my rant, and so now I want to know what you think of this news. Do you think Gunn has cleared up any confusion, or do you think he has added to it? Also, what do you think of Gunn's attempt at a reboot? Do you think it's fine to reboot some and not others, or are you like me and think it's a terrible mistake? Let me know in the comments below. Now, the final talking point before we end today's video is another comment James Gunn made about a shared universe, and it is something I completely agree with. He said, if you think of anything as investing time and effort, no matter what shared universe, you definitely shouldn't be. Every story should be enjoyed and worth partaking in and of itself, without its attachment to an outside world. If it feels like homework, screw it. Shared universes should add fun to the individual stories, not the other way round. The individual stories and characters are much more important to me than the connections between them.
You see, this is why he's a good director, but not a good boss. He understands what about a movie should be about. I understand that. I completely agree with that. But as for shared universe, he's just ruining everything.
Enjoy them, they feel like homework, or they are just watching it because it's connected to everything else. When the individual story is great on its own, the shared universe element only adds to it, and that is what Gunn needs to make sure he does with his DCU. It's a great first step that he recognizes this, because this is what will really help the DCU get off the ground. Telling stories that people enjoy without needing a cinematic universe for it. I just hope it can be executed properly, and I guess we will have to wait and see. But that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications so you never miss a video. I hope to see you here again soon, so until then, have a great day.
I completely agree with the majority of things he said. Completely. No. But hopeful for... I'm not hopeful. I'm not hopeful for anything with DCEU. It's for lately with the new information we're receiving from James Gunn. Every time he says something, I'm just like, oh, no. Oh, no. Because just the decision he's making, that's so difficult to comprehend. They should just, write on Twitter like, oh, I was just joking. We're doing a full reboot. No characters are returning. Of course, some people are going to be mad, but it's the best option, to be honest. If they just done everything, then with the new casting, new characters, new stories, the new spam, he could continue the spam legacy. It could be the first movie. He could just do creature commands. It does not matter. As long as there's new characters, it does not matter. This Blue Beetle, it's fine because Blue Beetle feels like it did not connect to any universe, to be honest. So if he continued with the DCEU, no DCU, it would be like, okay, I mean, he was not connected to DCEU anyway, so we never saw him there. It's understandable. Whereas other people like Peacemaker, Amanda Waller, majority of the people that were in Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad, they had somewhat of a meeting. They met with the Justice League or people from the DCEU. Like Amanda Waller, like you said, Amanda Waller, and Peacemaker too. The Justice League came in and tried to help him in the final of Peacemaker. They were there, so these people already. It's just they need to be all cast. To be honest. And I don't think that James Gunn wants to do that because He likes these characters. They were his characters, the Suicide Squad characters and the Peacemaker characters. These are the most characters he's picking, he's keeping. And also, Blue Beetle is also keeping Blue Beetle. Because mostly it was not connected to the DCEU, but as he might like the character too. So, and the thing about James Gunn is that he likes characters that are not very well known. Before he came into being the boss of the DCU, he said, I think he did comment saying that I don't want to write a Superman movie. The character is just bland. It's just, it's a character is just boring. He just wants to do wild characters like, the Suicide Squad, the Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's understandable. You people do have a preference, but when he was just put in charge of the DCU, he just said, no, I'm writing Superman. I know how to write Superman. I'm the best at it. So just all of that just makes me think like, does this dude really care about a better universe, or does he care about what he feels and what he cares about? Nothing else. Because truly, I might like James Gunn. I love these movies. I love the Peacemaker. I love the Suicide Squad. Even Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I loved them. But this, or if you look at these characters, there are more of characters like they're different. They are not huge characters. You can have a freedom to do whatever you want to do with them because they're just weird characters. That's what he's good at, making weird characters enjoyable. And I understand he's very good at that. But so far, I haven't seen him do any originals like Superman. And he himself, this was not like people just think that he himself just said, I love weird characters more than I love people like Superman, Flash, or his original characters that just they like blend, where you have to just focus on something that is written in the comic book. Otherwise, if you change it a lot, people are gonna get mad. I mean, we kind of see that with Man of Steel. There were a lot of things that were from the comic, but Superman, it was different from Christopher Reeve's Superman, and people got mad about it. For me personally, I was never really a huge fan for Superman until I watched that movie. That movie made me love Superman, and I don't care what you think about that. Just that movie made me love Superman, and he's not my favorite hero out of all the heroes, but now he's in my top 3 or top 5 because of that movie, and I really loved the interview with Superman. But as much as I loved him, the DCEU was a mess, especially after the Justice League movie came out. It was a mess, and everything after that was just changing direction all the time. So I was ready for a full reboot. Then when they said they were gonna do reboot, I was happy. I was like, okay, we're gonna do a reboot. Everything is gonna start fresh. I really like. I was okay with everything, and we know that majority of the reason why the DCEU failed is they were trying to be like Marvel. They too much trying to be Marvel. They tried to marvelize DCEU, and like I say, the DC universe or the DC, it's just a little bit more dark, and it should stay that way. It shouldn't be more like Marvel. Marvel is more like light mode, not light mode like it's a bad thing, but it's more like funny, family, enjoyable with superheroes flying around. That's what Marvel is. Whereas DCU is more like a dark, and it takes itself more seriously, and that's something that I really loved about the DCEU. That I really loved that it's kind of took itself seriously, like in the situation. If this is really happening in the world, how do people react? How would they do things, and how do the heroes react if they're kind of the situation? We're also trying to stick with the comic book sometimes. So I really loved about this. Even the comics, people always say that DC is a little bit more dark, and that's what I love. I love a little bit more dark than light, but I do love both. But sometimes you just need a little bit more. I just need a little bit more darkness. You know what I mean? Like this, I love the storytelling that we were getting. So yeah, this completely is amazing. The whole thing about soft reboot, keeping other characters, and the stories being the same but also not being the same. But it's a confusing thing. And this is, and as for people who say that this happened in the comics, sure, you might understand this, but know that more than 80% of the people that goes to see these movies, they just want to see a good movie, and if they see that this movie has some characters from a movie that was in the DCU, but they're also contacting like different Superman but same Wonder Woman, it's all confusion, and they're most likely not gonna recommend it to people. They're just gonna say, it's just a confusing movie. It's not worth it. That's what they'll do. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's mostly what they're going to do. And the movie will flop. It will flop. So for the benefit of Superman Legacy, it better not bring in Wonder Woman just or any other character from the DC, because that will be just confusing. And especially from the Justice League, just don't. If you really want to make that movie to make somewhat of a profit. So yeah, guys, this is just my thoughts on this news about James Gunn's decisions. I'm not really enjoying. I'm not so hopeful. I was hopeful at first, but the more information I get from him, the less hopeful I am from this universe. I want it to do great, but so far I'm just seeing. I'm not seeing good things out of this. So yeah. Anyway, like, subscribe, comment down below what you think about this. See you in the next video. Goodbye.